The dust rolled in shimmering waves across the open plains, carrying the scent of sun-baked earth and quiet secrets. At the edge of that endless gold stood Mara Hensley, shielding her eyes as she watched the lone cowboy approach, tired horse, worn boots, and a silence that clung to him like a second shadow. Something in the way he held himself felt broken, like he'd been carrying more than just a saddle for far too long. She didn't know his name, only that trouble followed men who drifted alone. What she didn't realize, what no one looking at him would ever guess, was that this quiet stranger owned half the state, more land than even the wealthiest ranch barons dared to dream of. And beneath that rugged silence was a man who hadn't allowed himself to love in years. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to RW Insights. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Mara lived on the outskirts of Brookfall, a sunlit town surrounded by wildflower fields and stubborn dreams. She had taken over her late mother's small homestead, a place that seemed too fragile to survive the world yet somehow kept standing. Every morning she worked the land alone, planting, patching, repairing with calloused hands and a spirit that refused to collapse. She wasn't afraid of hard work, she was afraid of losing the last piece of her mother she had left. So when she saw the cowboy approach the broken fence she'd been meaning to fix, her instinct wasn't fear, it was weariness. The cowboy introduced himself quietly as Ryland Creed, his voice deep and rough as gravel under wagon wheels. He didn't explain where he was headed or why he'd stopped, he simply asked if she had water. Mara noticed how he avoided her eyes, how his broad shoulders sagged beneath some invisible weight. She offered him a drink, and though his thanks was barely more than a mumble, she sensed sincerity in it, genuine, humble, almost painful. Days passed, and Ryland returned. At first Mara assumed he was just passing through the area and had taken a liking to the quiet of her land. But she soon noticed something unusual. He didn't ask for payment, didn't boast, didn't offer more than his hands and time. He helped mend fences, repaired old roofing, even brought her firewood without being asked. Mara found herself studying him, wondering what kind of drifter worked with such precision and discipline. He moved like someone who'd managed responsibility his entire life, not someone drifting from town to town. What Mara didn't know was that Ryland Creed had once been the wealthiest rancher in the region, heir to a vast empire of cattle, rivers, and sprawling valleys. But after losing the woman he loved in a storm years ago, he had walked away from everything. Money couldn't fill the hollowed-out space where his heart used to be. So he traded quiet boardrooms and polished boots for the open sky and the anonymity of dust roads. He kept his identity hidden, not out of pride but out of fear that people would see only his wealth and not the broken man behind it. As summer deepened, Mara learned to recognize the subtle shifts in his expression. She noticed how his jaw tightened at the mention of storms, how he froze when thunder rumbled in the distance, how he'd look away whenever she laughed, as if happiness was something he didn't believe he deserved anymore. She didn't push him, instead, she offered gentle moments of understanding. She cooked for him some evenings, leaving plates on the porch without comment. She asked about the places he'd traveled, never demanding explanations he wasn't ready to give. For a man who feared connection, Mara was a reminder that kindness could exist without expectation. But it wasn't just Ryland who carried weight. Mara had her own struggle, debts that hovered like storm clouds, threatening to take away the land she'd fought to keep. Letters arrived stamped in red, demanding payments she couldn't manage. She hid them under her mattress, convinced she was strong enough to save everything alone. Ryland sensed something was wrong, but Mara always smiled tightly and insisted she was fine. One scorching afternoon, while helping her dig a new irrigation trench, Ryland spotted one of the letters that had blown off her porch. He didn't open it, he didn't need to. He recognized the format, the urgency, the quiet desperation she tried to hide. She snatched it from his hand, her voice trembling as she insisted it was her burden, not his. For the first time since arriving, Ryland spoke with fire in his tone, not anger, but a raw honesty he'd been afraid to use. He told her she didn't have to break alone. That sometimes strength meant letting someone stand beside you, even when your instincts screamed to push them away. Mara stared at him in stunned silence, sensing an unexpected vulnerability behind his words, as if he was speaking from wounds older than she could imagine. The next morning, the truth arrived in Brookfall like thunder. The local bank manager, riding out to speak with Mara, froze when he saw Rylan on her property. Recognition hit instantly: Rylan Creed, the man whose holdings stretched across counties, the rancher whose disappearance had been whispered about for years. Word spread fast, echoing through the town like wildfire. Mara confronted Rylan, her voice shaking not with anger but with disbelief. He explained everything: the loss, the loneliness, the wandering. He told her he hadn't wanted wealth to define him, hadn't wanted pity or fear, only a place where he could breathe again. Mara didn't know whether to feel betrayed or honored. But when she looked into his tired eyes, she realized he was still the same man who fixed fences in silence, who brought firewood without being asked, who shielded her from storms without a word. Wealth hadn't changed him, pain had. And healing had begun right there on her land. Rylan paid off her debts quietly, without fanfare, asking nothing in return. But what truly changed everything was not the money, it was the moment Mara reached out, touched his weathered hand, and told him that he didn't have to keep punishing himself for the past. That love wasn't a betrayal of memory but a testament to it. That sometimes the heart learns to beat again in the unlikeliest of places. As autumn spread gold across the valley, Rylan Creed stopped drifting. He built a small cabin beside Mara's homestead, not out of necessity but out of choice. And for the first time in years, he allowed laughter to brush against his ribs, hope to settle into his bones, and love, slow, gentle, unexpected, to guide him home. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to RW Insights. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who may need them. And before we close, here's a special request: comment, "Hope lives here," if you believe in fresh starts and unexpected miracles. In the quiet glow of a new dawn, Mara and Rylan stood together, two souls shaped by loss, strengthened by kindness, and forever changed by the courage to let someone in.